Congressman, I want to ask you a quick question. I have been looking for one reliable place to find out how many people have entered the United States. I've got all sorts of statistics. I know that 25,000 native Chinese entered the United States for the first time in 2023 fiscal year, 10 times more than the previous year, and indeed more than the 10 years combined. What do you make of that, by the way? That small fact, more than 24,000 Chinese nationals crossed our southern border.
I think it's a massive national security risk. I've asked the intelligence community to give us an assessment of whether this is just economic migration or something more nefarious. I've yet to receive that assessment. But anytime you're dealing with military-age males on that scale from our primary foreign adversary, you have to assume that there is a national security risk involved.
But when we say that, people on the left laugh at us as being alarmists. But I know 3 million people a year is a lot, but the 25,000 Chi-Coms worry me more. And they're all Chi-Coms, I think, because I don't think you get out of China very easily unless you're blessed by the party. Can you?
No, it was said in one of our hearings that the most powerful person in China is the immigration officer at the U.S. Embassy, or really any person at an embassy in China, trying to facilitate people getting out of China because people are so desperate to leave. And what we've seen in the work of our committee through multiple investigations is that when people come here to America from China, even legally, let's stay on a student visa to study at one of our universities, they are still subject to the long arm of the Chinese Communist Party, subject to transnational repression, extrajudicial coercion, intimidation. In order to force them to give information to the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP will threaten their family members who are still back in China. We've had multiple students on our campuses here in America come to us say, I was physically assaulted by someone in a Chinese nonprofit organization. And then on WeChat, I was shown pictures of my family saying in like a mafia-esque fashion, it would be a shame if something happened to them. This is how they operate. They don't respect our borders. They believe that members of the Chinese diaspora are organs of the state. And even people that are multiple generations removed from China, they believe should still be beholden to the Chinese Communist Party.
Now, you're the chair of the Select Committee on Engagement with the Chinese Communist Party, so you know a lot about the Chi-Coms. Given that they know our border is open and that we had 3,200,000 people cross it last year, 2,706,000 people cross it in 22, 1,905,000 people cross it in 21. Do you think the Chinese know that it's open and have plans for it being opening?
Well, certainly they know it's open. I guess I confess to you my primary concern, particularly given that chaos in the Middle East continues to spiral out of control, is that a terrorist group would exploit the wide open southern border in order to hurt America. What the Chinese have done for years now, over the last decade, is actually more insidious and doesn't require you to come up with some complicated sort of Hollywood-esque plot where they would send military males across the southern border to do something to us domestically. They've done two things to us that don't even require them to go that far. One, they've allowed the flow of deadly fentanyl, the precursors of which are produced in China, to go across the southern border, killing over 1 million Americans, poisoning Americans. And right now, the Biden administration is out there touting the working group that they have on fentanyl with the Chinese Communist Party. We've seen this movie before. The Chinese Communist Party makes promises about cracking down on fentanyl production, and they never deliver. And what happens is more Americans die. In my community, in Brown County, the heart of my district, we're losing about 3 people a week to the scourge of fentanyl. It's absolutely horrific, the human tragedy, and China is culpable for a large portion of it. The second thing they've done, at least according to open source reporting, is to wage cyber warfare against us and our critical infrastructure aggressively. Every single day, our critical infrastructure, and I'm not just talking about a DoD network or a nuclear command and control site. I'm talking about your local water utility is under attack from a variety of cyber actors, foremost among them, the Chinese Communist Party. That's why we're having a hearing this morning featuring General Nakasone. By the way, hats off to General Nakasone. Today is his chains of command ceremony at NSA. He's leaving, and he still agreed to testify before our committee because the issue is so important.
Oh, bravo.
We're going to have
for
Jen
him.
Easterly from, absolutely, he's a great American. Jen Easterly, who's in charge of CISA. And we're going to have Chris Wray, the head of the FBI and the National Cyber Director, in open testimony, testify to the threat the CCP poses in cyberspace. So those are the two things that really worry me when it comes to the homeland.
I have a question for Director Wray. Have you got a pencil to write this down? Because I want this question asked. I mean, I don't ask for much. How many full-time special agents are devoted to finding and frustrating the efforts of the Chinese Communist Party? That's it. I just want to know how many people, because they got people checking into Latin Mass attending Catholics. And I don't know why they're doing that instead of chasing Chi-Coms in the country.
Well, you and I as practicing Catholics, we don't need to be policed. We walk around with such a heavy sense of guilt. We always feel like we're doing something wrong. So we don't need the long arm of the law to make us go to confession every week. It's our own sense of ourselves as sinners that polices our daily activities.
But I do want, I
like
really would love to
I'll ask
know
you.
how big it is. Because I know during the Soviet days, they had quite a lot of people involved in counterintelligence. I just don't know how many people they have right now. And I suspect, this is just Hugh Hewitt, that the extent of the Chi-Com espionage in the United States would surprise most Americans in the same way that Israelis are surprised by the extent of the Hamas tunnel system. In other words, they knew it was there. They're gobsmacked at how big it is. Habib Radigur just told me that. They had no idea how big it is. And I think that's true about the Chinese espionage effort. What do you think?
Yes, because it's not just their formal spy agency, what is known as the MSS, which is the KGB equivalent, right? Which is very aggressive, increasingly very competent, particularly when it comes to technological collection. It's also something called the United Front Work Department, which is actually a much bigger organization. There's no analog here in the United States. It combines espionage with influence activities, with intimidation, coercion. It seeks to co-opt every person of Chinese descent in the United States. And it is a massive collection platform, as well as an action arm for intimidating people in order to follow the party line and to capture elites. There's a phenomenon known as elite capture, where they bribe, they co-opt elites in America and around the world in order to advance narratives that are more friendly to the Chinese Communist Party. The United Front Work Department, to put it in context, is bigger by an order of magnitude than our own State Department. And it reports directly to Xi Jinping. One thing Xi Jinping did when he came into power was elevate the status of the United Front Work Department. And he's called United Front Work, which dates back to the earliest days of the Chinese Communist Party, his magic weapon. This is a poorly understood phenomenon. And I don't think, to your original point, that we have the requisite expertise in the federal government yet to understand and counter CCP United Front Work.
It would start with the Bureau, though, right? That would be their number one job, to counter United Front Work and the MSN.
Exactly, because remember when the first event I did as chairman of the committee, I went to Manhattan and I did a rally outside this illegal police station in the heart of Manhattan. This was a perfect example of United Front Work. You had a innocuous sounding nonprofit group that rented a building in Manhattan that was being used by the CCP to police people on American soil and intimidate them and physically assault them. That was squarely within the FBI's responsibility. The FBI in that case was slow to act. I do think they've learned some lessons from that experience. I've talked with Director Wray directly about this issue, but that's a phenomenon that's happening around the world. That is an example of United Front Work, and that's an example where the FBI needs to be more aggressive in tackling this. So nobody's being hunted on American soil. America should be a
Well,
haven
I would love
from
tomorrow's headline to
persecution, not a
be
hunting ground.
Christopher Wray tells Mike Gallagher that there are 1,400 FBI agents devoted to the Chinese Communist Party's operation in the United States. I don't think you'll get an answer. I think he'll fudge, but good luck to you. Representative Gallagher, thank you, my friend. Go Browns. Super Bowl next year for the Browns.